What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Box, the pre-draft special. The offseason is fully underway. Babiak, how are we doing?
Doing good. Up late for the NBA draft. You guys following Mike's page saw us there last night, but we are locked back into hockey.
Yep, we were at Barclays, the former home of the New York Islanders. We have a metric shit ton to talk about, especially now that the JJ Peterka trade kind of came out of nowhere last night. We got Peterka, Zegras, Kane. We're going to talk about the Hockey Hall of Fame, Jonathan Toews signing, Marchment trade, Burakovsky trade, Duchesne extension, Zetterlund extension, Donato extension, Atlanta potentially coming back, Riley Smith re-signing, and then we'll obviously talk about the draft. So yeah, we got a lot. This is probably going to be like an hour 30 plus. But yeah, let's start with Peterka. Last night, 11 p.m., Frank Saravalli kind of went out on his own and said that a deal was going down, and eventually it did. Mike Kesselring and Josh Doan heading to the Buffalo Sabres, JJ Peterka to Utah. Peterka signing a 5-year deal at $7.7 million. And I had the bold take to say that I don't think that this is the worst trade in the world for the Buffalo Sabres. I don't love it. Peterka is clearly the best player in this trade, considering the fact that last year he put up like 30 and 40 kind of paces. Well, basically exactly that. But I'll first start off with Utah. Just considering the fact I think he is a very good fit for the Utah Hockey Club. They're clearly building this team based off speed and transitional play off the rush. Peterka thrives in transition. Utah took the most transitional rush shots in the NHL this season. So from that angle, I like it a lot. I think him and Cooley are going to be a damn good partnership duo for Utah for a very long time. The deal is solid at $7.7 million. You definitely would have loved to get him at 7-8 years, considering he is a restricted free agent. But once you trade for a guy, you kind of lose a decent amount of that leverage that maybe you have with signing your own restricted free agents. But that's my initial spiel. Babiak, what do you think?
Technically not the Utah Hockey Club. Peterka, technically
Utah
the
Mammoth.
first ever Utah Mammoth acquisition. Now, I also think this is like fine enough for Buffalo. I mean, the more I look into it, the more I'm not really convinced with Peterka as a player. His PDO was over 103 last year, on ice shooting percentage over 14%. He's young. The statistical regression can easily be offset by just like, oh, he's becoming a better player in the future. But that 68 points is reasonably fake, and I'd expect him to go back down into the high 50s, low 60s range unless he develops significantly more. He didn't really fit in on Buffalo's power play at all, which is interesting because Buffalo has, for as bad as they are in so many ways, a pretty decent power play. So that's an interesting fit there. He's probably going to be worth 7.75. He certainly was worth that this past year, but it's not a guarantee of a contract. It's not necessarily a steal of a contract. That might be a break-even market value thing and not getting any excess value from it. It might be a great deal. Maybe he'll develop even further, grow even more. But I genuinely expect him to have a worse season this year in Utah than he did last year in Buffalo, just because the numbers say he had so much puck luck. As for what Buffalo gets back, Kesselring's fine, probably a second pair D on a not great team, which, Buffalo is able to slot that in, makes them feel more okay trading Byram. Not sure how to read on Doan. I think most people, when he was drafted, assumed this was a Nepo pick. This is nothing. But his college stats and his AHL stats were both actually pretty good. I can't say I bothered to look at how he was doing in the AHL once since he was drafted. But I
he had that hot start
this morning before we recorded, and his AHL numbers are pretty solid. So maybe you have a real third liner there.
Yeah, the Doan stat that's crazy is he was third in the entire NHL at expected goals percentage at 5-on-5. Only Hyman and McDavid were higher. Draisaitl at fourth. It was only 13 minutes a night. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to act like he's a future stud. But yeah, 7 goals, 19 points, 51 games, only shot 8%. I think at 23 years old, I think he's going to be a pretty effective middle sixer.
Yeah, it's I certainly don't think Buffalo got destroyed in this trade here. I think that they traded a guy with a kind of fluky season at the absolute peak of his value and got 2 roster pieces back.
Yeah, I'm decently high on Kesselring. I think at 25 years old, he's definitely a late bloomer. 29 points this season, similarly to Doan, not in some like huge role, only was playing like 18 minutes a night. But I think when you look at what he does well and what he struggles at moving the puck out of the zone. You put him with Power or Byram, and they Power or
Byron's
Darlene,
probably
Jesus.
getting traded,
Yeah, no, but
all things
Power,
considered.
Power or Darlene, and you just let him play more of a defensive role. I think he can be damn good. Like what he has shown at the level this year, only 2.35 expected goals against per 60. It really just depends on what the deals end up being for Kesselring. Like he's extension eligible. If he signs a 4 or 5 year deal at around $4 million and they lock him up, cost controlled, then I really like it for Buffalo. Josh Doan, I think you just see how he plays this year, but like the salary cap coming into effect here, I think this could be very solid work by Buffalo. And again, we talk about right-handed defensemen for Buffalo, like that was their number one objective this offseason. So I can't kill them for moving off a guy. Like if he got offer sheeted, they only would have got a first and a third round pick. I'd much rather have Kesselring and Josh Doan at this point. They probably should have got either another solid roster player or like a second round pick on top of this. But I think people are being very dramatic. And especially when the Peterka deal was only 5 years, it only takes him to 28 years old. And I think only one like unrestricted free agency year. Like they're going to have to pay up eventually. And I don't think it's going to be some huge surplus value in the next 2 to 3 years where I'm going to kill them.
No, I agree. I don't think it's a surplus value situation. I don't even know how many Buffalo fans are out there thinking they got killed. It seems to me like a lot of the trade reaction is, neutral on both of these teams, right? They're fans of the bigger market teams or the better teams. They don't actually watch Buffalo games or Utah games. They just pulled up Hockey Reference, saw that Peterka had 68 points and said, wow, that's so terrible for Buffalo. I mean,
Yeah.
based on all the reports, Peterka straight up was not going to re-sign there. I have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
sources myself, but every like
That's
third-hand
did.
source I found on Twitter said like Peterka wanted out. He is who Kevin Adams was talking about when Kevin Adams made his little speech about guys not buying in. Peterka would not have signed an 8x10 in Buffalo because he was that desperate to move out, is what the situation seems like. Given
Yeah. And
that,
I mean,
too, you need to factor in. So Buffalo's maybe not getting 100% of value because everyone in the world knows Peterka is getting traded one way or the other.
yeah. Yeah. Kevin Adams, I think we agree, should get fired. He has done a bad job in
It's been
Buffalo,
bad.
but given like Peterka wanted out in part because he's done such a mediocre job and traded away previous guys that turned out to be horrendous deals. But given this isolated situation of Peterka basically saying, I don't want to be here, the fact that they were able to get a potential very good, big, which is very valued today in the NHL, big right-handed defenseman that is probably going to be very cost controlled in a middle six forward that is definitely going to be a lot better defensively than JJ Peterka. Peterka was 10th out of 165, fifth worst in expected goals against per 60 this year. And it wasn't even a Buffalo thing. Ryan McLeod checked in at 40th. So like he was pretty god awful defensively. I know you're not trading him for his defense, but when looking at this Utah overall team, their defense, team defense, physicality does scare me a little bit. So yeah, I really can't just hate it for Buffalo just considering the fact it's Buffalo. I feel like people just have this notion that every single deal that they make is going to be a losing deal, but he's not a Sam Reinhart. He's not a Jack Eichel. I don't think that he's some kind of next level difference maker. Maybe I end up being completely wrong, but people are, as you say, acting like this is the floor of JJ Peterka when there is a chance that this was just not a career year, but as you mentioned, he's going to regress a decent amount given his on ice shooting percentage. There's serious concerns, but everybody just looks past that because it's Buffalo is basically what I'm saying. And that kind of annoys me to a decent amount.
Yeah, it's, I agree that it seems like a lot of fans have this expectation that whenever Buffalo trades someone away, they're going to go on to be a stud and it'll work out bad for Buffalo, which, to be fair, Kevin Adams does have that reputation for a reason. It's not totally unjustified. People aren't pulling that out of thin air. Kevin Adams is like 5 for 7 on trading young, pretty decent players and then having them completely explode to the next level in their next city. But it's just based purely on where the numbers are at. I'm not going to say this is a career year for Peterka, but like absolutely seems like a fluke year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in the least.
I think Fluke's a little bit too far.
I wouldn't be surprised in the least if he goes
Some puck
from
luck.
68 points this past year down to like mid to high 50s next year, up back to the low to mid 60s the year after. Like, I don't see really a path where he improves significantly on high 60s points. I think like second liner, awful defense, not quite scoring at a first line rate, just is the player he is.
Yeah, I think he's slotted in nicely to be that fourth forward in Utah. I clearly like Keller more. Logan Cooley had 25 goals, 40 assists at 20 years old. He's ahead of him. And Dylan Guenther, I think, does have that elite goal scoring trait that he's going to be a consistent 35 and 35, 40 and 40 kind of guy. So Peterka as your number 4, as long as he is like 65-ish points, again, wanted a little bit more term on that contract. But I don't think you're relying on him with this price given up for him to be that much of a stud. He's definitely the fourth forward, maybe even the fifth forward going forward, considering they might be keeping that pick at fourth overall. So yeah, for Buffalo, Kesselring was kind of expendable, considering they had John Marino, considering they have Sean Durzi that are a little bit older, but still in their late 20s. Doan also pretty expendable, even though I just talked pretty highly about him because they have those young forwards. They have TJ Ginla that they selected last year in the draft. So for Utah, like, I feel like we're trashing on it too much, but it is still well worth it given what they gave up in the contract. Although I don't think it's some kind of steal, is pretty solid. But yeah, as we talked about, do we think Peterka is going to be a star for 35 goal, 50 assist, 85 point consistent kind of guy? I just don't think so unless Logan Cooley really reaches his ceiling in terms of being a playmaker. But yeah, we're defending Buffalo a solid amount, and I think that they're just catching too much shrapnel.
They are. It's, it's like you say, at the end of the day, if Peterka works out, even as a best case scenario, I still see him as more of a passenger with an elite young guy on Utah than his own line driver.
Do we think Utah keeps the pick? Do we think that they draft a center, or do you think that they maybe do something for Noah Dobson now that they traded away a right-handed defenseman or something like that?
I don't see them.
I think you just take
Dobson
the center
only because having already paid 7.5 on an RFA contract, I wouldn't be thrilled about throwing another 8.5 on an RFA contract.
Try 9.5 for Noah Dobson. Yeah, they have the money to potentially do it. The only problem is Logan Cooley's an RFA.
Yeah, you could do it
next summer,
but
well, so.
If you have a super young team and these guys all have contracts that will still be there when Cooley and Guenther and when these guys need their extension.
Gunther's locked up, thank God. No, Gunther's locked up 8 years, $7.1 million. That's amazing. But yeah, I think you probably don't go after a Dobson because I think even with this Peterka deal, if I'm Logan Cooley, I'm absolutely elated because my number starts with 8.5 at the bare minimum if I'm signing this summer. And if they get Noah Dobson and he gets 9.5, then if Logan Cooley takes another step, he's getting absolutely paid. But I'm obviously very high in Logan Cooley. I think they should lock him up this summer. Also, I just want to point this out. Like for Buffalo, it kind of sucks that it is Buffalo and they are so cheap because I would like this even more if I knew that the money was going to get spent that they're saving on JJ Peterka. The only problem is it's probably not. They're probably going to go into this season with like $10 million unspent like they did last year.
Absolutely.
Because you can really convince me that like contract wise, again, you lock up Kesselring, you lock up Doan before they really establish themselves, and you can have cap hit wise this be a win for the Buffalo Sabres. The problem is just what they do with that remaining money. It just could go completely unspent.
Probably will. I mean, this certainly clears the room for if you want to give Alex Tuch a big extension. But I don't even know if you want to do that, quite frankly. Like, does he really fit their timeline? I'm not sure. Does he really elevate the team? I mean, he's a great player, but we've seen how good Buffalo is with Tuch as their second best forward, and the answer is not very. So,
yeah,
they have a lot of holes to plug.
Well, I think with this trade, I think they're definitely trying to be competitive. They probably could have got a decently high pick or a very good prospect for JJ Peterka. They just opted for more of this NHL ready guys, a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old. So I think if anything, yeah, as you said, this makes it more likely that they lock up Alex Tuch and just say, our time is now 25 through 28. And I'm not going to lie, I think Buffalo actually could be pretty good next year. I'm starting to like convince myself. It's going to come down to UPL. UPL needs to be solid, but like now that they actually have, in my opinion, a competent right-handed defenseman, they could maybe be something.
I'm just
maybe.
Not,
Again,
I'm not a
guys are going to have
believer
to take
in
solid
their
steps.
development. I'm just not.
Yeah.
If,
I'm excited with this trade for Zach Benson to get some serious ice time now.
If
that's
Zach
like another
Benson
positive from
and
this.
Jack Quinn develop the way they were supposed to, then Buffalo should be a playoff team. Maybe not next year, but the year after that. The problem is Jack Quinn's development has really stalled, and I'm not super enthused by how Benson is being handled up there. If you go 0 for 2 on getting top 6 wings out of those two guys, then this whole era of the Buffalo rebuild was a wash.
Benson, I'm still very high on. He was stuck in like a third line role. Amazing defensive results. Definitely needs to take a step offensively, but I think that he will now. Also, Josh Norris is like a huge question mark. There's a lot of question marks. I'm just saying, like, would it shock me if the Buffalo Sabres made the playoffs or were the number 9 team in the Eastern Conference next year? Got to see what they do with Byram as well. But I'm starting to somewhat believe, and I know that's crazy because they traded the better player in this draft, but I do think this is going to make them a far more balanced team across the board.
I'm not a believer to that extent now.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on to the Trevor Zegras trade. Ryan Poehling, the 45th overall pick, and a 2026 4th-round pick for Trevor Zegras. I put my thoughts out there. I think Anaheim definitely sold a little bit too low. Probably should have waited until they saw what he was like under Joel Quenneville. But I can't kill, as long as Anaheim, this is really going to come down to whether Anaheim lands another big forward. I can understand the logic if they're going after a Marner, if they're going after an Ehlers, if they're trading for someone. Zegras probably would have started on the third line next season, considering the guys that they have of Carlson, Gauthier, McTavish. Chris Kreider, I think next season is going to be better than Trevor Zegras. Troy Terry, Petrano is a pretty damn good player. So I could understand that if they land another big fish. The return is actually okay considering how bad and injured he's been kind of the last 2 seasons, especially defensively. So I can't kill Verbeek. Similarly to Kevin Adams, he is going to get the no benefit of doubt is going to go in Verbeek's way because of some of the questionable moves that he's made of late, like the Kreider trade, like the Trouba trade. But I don't think it's the end of the world for the end. I don't think it's some kind of fleece because, again, Zegras has been very injured. He's a center that doesn't play a lot of defense, that doesn't really play the way that the NHL is kind of trending in terms of physicality. But I still like it for Philadelphia, considering the upside of Zegras from what we saw in his first 2 seasons. I assume that you're very much more higher on Zegras than me.
No, I'm not, actually. I'm not.
Oh, really? In our group chat, you were like, what the hell?
In the group chat, I was saying, what the hell, because the timing of this makes absolutely no sense. Zegras was an RFA next year. You could have played him a season, see if he proves he's healthy, and then traded him next year. This is like the absolute lowest of Zegras's value. Anaheim's a bad team. They're a rebuilding team still. They're in the rebuilding phase. They need more assets. Selling low on an asset like this that a year and a half ago you could have sold really high on, maybe next year you could have sold higher than this on. I think the timing of it is all wrong, and there's really no incentive, right? There's no reason you had to trade Zegras this year. If he plays out the season and he's an RFA next year and he wants to sign for too much money and you don't want to sign him, would you really get a worse return than this next year for him? It'd be like the same, I figure. A worst case scenario, it's the same. Best case scenario, he has a good year and you get a better return. All of that being said, Ryan Poehling overall, not just points, as an overall player, gives you like 85% of what Zegras has given for the last year or 2 years, and he gives that at half the price. So it's
like a third of the price. Yeah, $1.9 million next season compared to 5.75. Yeah,
it's really just a
that's where I think
Zegras bounces back.
Yeah, for Anaheim, I think it's actually a pretty solid return because, again, Poehling, 31 points, 68 games, blocks a lot of shots, plays defense. He's a much better fit on this Anaheim Ducks team that does need more so physical bottom sixers. Obviously, Zegras has a way higher ceiling, but you get the 45th overall pick. That's pretty solid. And don't get me wrong, Philadelphia, like their picks are expendable as shit. They had 4 second-round picks, 3 first-round picks. So I still like the gamble for Philadelphia because, again, if it doesn't work out next season for Philadelphia, they can trade him at the deadline, trade him next summer. But yeah, I see people killing Anaheim on this. when it's so weird because like everybody calls Trevor Zegras overrated as shit, but then once he gets traded, now it kind of flips, being like what a buy low snag by the Philadelphia Flyers. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how Zegras and Michkov play in Philadelphia if they do play together. And Zegras, he just needs to work it out defensively. Like he's been so bad defensively the last 2 seasons. If you can just give me 55 points in just like bottom 25 percentile analytics instead of bottom 5 like it's been, I do think that this is well worth it for Philadelphia. But for Anaheim at this point, I rate Seneca higher. I obviously rate Carlson, McTavish, Gauthier higher. Whoever they pick at 10th, I know it's not that my value of a pick, but I could see that ending up being a better player than Trevor Zegras. Like for this Anaheim Ducks team, for the way that Zegras Verbeek wants to build, and I'm not saying he has the best vision of all time, he didn't draft Zegras, and at this point, Zegras did become expendable. As you talked about before, maybe could have went into the season, but I don't think Quenneville. I saw people comparing him to Patrick Kane, which is like absolute blasphemy, being like Quenneville developed Patrick Kane. It's like Patrick Kane was first overall and had 150 points in the OHL in his draft year. But yeah, maybe it could have worked out, but it wasn't the last 2 seasons. And I think that this package is pretty fair. Paling's also 26 years old. It's 2 years older than Zegras.
Yeah, I have an objection for sure with you saying, like, if Zegras has 55 points and is a bottom 25 percentile defensive player, that's not good. That's not scoring enough to be a legit 2C. And it's not.
No, I think he's going to have to kick to the wing probably. I think defensively it's just never going to be good enough. And I think it's not like he plays some physical style of game. I think he is going to be a winner.
55 points, no physicality, no defense is not a top 6 player in this league. It's just not. If you can't clear over that 60-point plateau pretty safely, that's not a top 6 player you're describing. And if he's not top 6, I don't know what he's really going to give you on the third line unless it's in like a very specialized Taylor Hall on Carolina type role. Zegras is just a very hard player to evaluate, right? Because his ceiling is very high. I still believe that, right? His ceiling is maybe a legit 1C if the offense really clicks. If he can really click on offense, you can overlook a lot of defensive shortcomings in this league. But then the floor is, what is he? He's not
we saw the last
top
2 years.
6. He doesn't score enough to be a top 6 player. He doesn't do anything else enough to be a bottom 6 player. What's his role there? And it's, even though he's 24, he is absolutely a guy where, maybe we already have seen the very best of him. Maybe we haven't. Maybe he'll put things back together. But like, it's absolutely possible that 10 years from now, we'll look back at Trevor Zegras and everyone will say, oh, he really did have his best seasons when he was 21 and 22. And it was all downhill from age 22. Like that's a possible outcome. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. I'm saying that's genuinely possible.
Babs hates the Philadelphia Flyers fans. You were trashing them like a couple weeks ago. They're not gonna like this. But yeah, I agree. Like his first 2 seasons really was like the perfect, just like all offense, no defense, like rebuilding team. They didn't give a shit about actually winning, and he was just able to go F off and show a bunch of skill, do Michigan's, all that stuff. And as a result, maybe we did inflate him a little bit because there wasn't development in terms of the rest of his game or any like serious goal scoring, high level goal scoring ability, where I could definitely see like he just never adapts to playing like a winning style of hockey.
All of that's true, but it's really, at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff, again, you could overlook if the offense was improving and growing on those first 2 seasons, but the offense has gotten worse. Like, it stagnated from his second year forward, and then after he returned from injury, it got noticeably worse.
So what would you give the trade for the Philadelphia Flyers? I think I went with like an A- and a B for the Ducks. What would you be at?
I would say like B's for both. I mean, I see the upside here for Philly. There's definitely upside.
Yeah,
I just don't think the odds of realizing that ceiling upside are super high.
Yeah, I still think you got to be a little bit higher on Philadelphia just because it's not a Marco Rossi situation where you have to give him this big contract or a JJ Peterka, and it did only cost a second-round pick. It is a mid-second-round pick and a fourth in a middle sixer that you have a shit ton of in Philadelphia that don't really make a serious difference. But yeah, I think people just immediately see the name value, immediately see the flashes that we have, but ignore kind of the rest of his game. And as a result, I don't think it's some A. I don't think it's some A plus or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's a worthy risk for Philadelphia that we have talked about so much on this podcast, lacking high level offensive creation outside of Matvei Michkov, where I think you got to like it a decent degree.
Yeah, I mean, I like it in the sense that you do. Philly has literally zero good offensive centers right now, and you need to supply Michkov with one. They have some talent there. I mean, Noah Cates is a great player, but he's not going to help Michkov along.
Yeah.
Even like, Ryan Poehling he's a guy who I can see playing like a nice third line role on a legit contender in a way that Zegras might never have a comfy fit on a legit contender.
Yeah. It's much like the JJ Peterka deal. I could easily see Poehling re-signing in Anaheim, like a 4-year deal at $3.75 million. And he's just in a very effective bottom sixer throughout his prime in Anaheim. And you're like, oh, Anaheim actually did pretty well. They didn't have to give Trevor Zegras some kind of big contract, or if he struggled the following season and lost all trade value. So I think people are just far too harsh on Anaheim. I understand that the Verbeek vision has been a little bit concerning, but I think people are being dramatic.
Agreed.
Because it's Trevor Zegras.
Agree.
Because he was on the cover. Because he was such a high-level prospect coming out. You want to hit on the Evander Kane trade?
Yeah, let's do it.
Evander Kane for a 4th-round pick. I don't like this. I don't like this that much for the Vancouver Canucks. I understand that he only has 1 year left. It is a contract year. At the deadline, they could maybe flip him for more than a 4th-round pick. But helping out your divisional rival get out of a bad contract and you're giving them a 4th-round pick, just not good. Even in the last 3 playoff runs, he hasn't been that good for the Edmonton Oilers, and maybe has actively been hurting his team at times. 13 goals, 12 assists, 25 points in 53 games. His first year in the playoffs, he had 13 goals in 15 games. It was absolutely insane. But outside of that, it's been very underwhelming. Even in his last regular season, 24 goals, 20 assists, 44 points in 77 games. Obviously, he had injury last year. That was like kind of a bullshit injury. But at 34 years old, I don't know why you're taking on a guy like this that on top of it also has locker room concerns. It's just very concerning for Vancouver. I understood like a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, if they missed on all their top targets this summer, taking on Evander Kane and saying like, come playoff time, he's going to be physical. He's going to hit. He can maybe score some goals. But for Vancouver, that might not even be a playoff team and now only has $7 million of salary cap, and with Pia Suter and Besser as unrestricted free agents, they're going to be a worse team next year. And Evander Kane's not a regular season player. I just don't like it really one bit. I'm not going to overreact and say it's the worst deal of all time and going to send Vancouver Canucks back years, but they're just running with their heads cut off, it looks like, to try to maintain some level of relevance to be able to re-sign Quinn Hughes next summer or extend Quinn Hughes next summer. Are you higher on it, lower on it? What do you think?
I am higher. So here's where I'll agree with you, is that the overall direction of the franchise this signals is we need to go all out to make the 8 seed, because if we don't, Quinn Hughes is going to leave us for New Jersey. That's what this move screams to me, and I think that's a dumb, bad, terrible way to run a sports team. And they shouldn't do that. That's not good. I don't like that aspect of it. And I will not like if Vancouver's entire offseason is we added a bunch of middle sixers on 1-year deals to take a run at the 8 seed. What I do,
dude, right now, Pettersson's their number 1 forward. Who's their number 2? Like, it's bad right now. It's really bad, that forward core.
Great.
And even if Pettersson bounces back, it's pretty bad.
What I do like is I think Evander Kane, the player, will be worth $5 million at least this year, and you're not on the hook for more than that.
Really?
I think, based on, it's so silly to say rising cap on a 1-year contract, but based on what the cap number will be this year, I think no player at or better than Evander Kane's level is going to be on as good of a contract as 1 year, $5 million. Everyone else who's on Evander Kane's tier is going to sign for equal or more money for much longer term. Right? Looking at this as
like those are going to be bad deals. Like, it doesn't make it a good thing.
If I look at this from the perspective of a 4th-round pick is irrelevant, Vancouver signed Evander Kane for a 1-year, $5 million contract. I think that's one of the better veteran middle six contracts that'll be given out. There are going to be third liners who I trust to score less than him that get much more overall money. I do not even remotely buy into the framing of, oh, I can't believe you'd help out a division rival, because in the scheme of things, I don't see how this helps out Edmonton. I don't see how signing Trent Frederick for 8 years, $4 million. So now you need to dump a better player than Trent Frederick, who's making $1 million more. I don't see how that's helping Edmonton.
34
overall.
versus 26 years old.
8
Trent
years
Frederick
at a
deal's
career
not
high.
finalized.
Let's
18 goals, 22 assists. 18 goals, 22 assists.
Let's tackle the extension while we're doing this.
Dude, I don't like the Trent Frederick deal. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely understand moving out of Evander Kane, especially when you get a 4th-round pick back to get off of Evander Kane. Trent Frederick was injured this year. It was bad. Don't get me wrong, but I think Trent Frederick can be a consistent 15 and 15 guy. And as you talked about with the cap going up, he is 26 years old. If he was 31, I'd agree. Like, what the hell is going on? Why are you prioritizing Frederick so much over Kane, giving him that long-term of a deal? But based on what we saw in the 2024 season, again, he's got to get healthy, but I could see it work. And again, at the end of the day, I just don't think Evander Kane's a $5.125 million guy. And it's probably going to be like $3.75 million. Also moving out Kane, that can potentially allow them to re-sign Evan Bouchard long-term, which I think we both agree they should go long-term instead of a 2 to 3 year deal at still would be like 8.59, probably even $9.5 million. So it's twofold. It's not like Evander Kane's cap hit is exactly what Trent Frederick's cap hit is. It's more so Frederick and the extra $1 to $2 million to go longer term with Bouchard.
I just hate the whole narrative there, right? Evander Kane in the playoffs had 6 goals, 12 points. Oh my God, he's such a terrible player. He's losing the Oilers game.
He was ass for them in the Stanley Cup final, dude. He was such a liability.
There were many Oilers who were liabilities in the Cup finals. I'm just looking at the overall playoffs here. Evander Kane, 6 goals, 12 points. Everyone acts like he was a terrible player in the playoffs and he's a terrible guy, and he makes the Oilers worse every time he steps out there. Trent Frederick had 1 goal and 4 points in the playoffs, and you're telling me that the gap between those two is only $1 million? I think it's a much larger gap than that.
I'm not going to defend the Trent Frederick contract extension. No, actually, I will a little bit. I think he's going to bounce back, and I think him playing in a middle six role will actually be pretty effective. Based on what I saw in that 2024 season with the Boston Bruins, I'm chalking this year up more so to injury. I don't think that he's going to reach the 20 and 20 that he got in Boston. Well, actually probably could if he played with McDavid or Draisaitl.
If Trent Frederick was playing with McDavid or Draisaitl, you should just nuke the
franchise. That is true. That is true. But again, the other thing with Evander Kane is he basically just rested up this entire regular season. He's 34 years old playing a full regular season. We're not sure what that's going to look like because again, his last regular season was only 24 goals, 20 assists, 44 points. He did play a decent amount with McDavid and Draisaitl. So was he even worth $5.125 million in 2023, 2024 I don't know. Not really.
I mean,
but again, he's going from that to Elias Pettersson.
Sixer, right? He's a real middle sixer in the sense that he looks fine-ish. Like he's a good third liner, a second liner, depending on what the team is. Like he's a true middle sixer.
But again, in
not
Vancouver,
like the Trent kind where like this guy is a bottom sixer, he's a third liner, but you're gonna say middle six to kind of gas him up like that.
But again, the uncertainty of who the hell is going to center him in Vancouver, in the real age and body concerns, in locker room concerns. I know that he has been less of a bad locker room presence recently in Edmonton compared to prior places, but it's just really confusing, man. And again, it restricts them so much. It's 1 year, but again, it's not like Vancouver had all this money to throw around. Now they have $7 million of salary cap space with a worse roster than the prior season. They should have done something more creative, more aggressive, in my opinion. Maybe they eventually do actually get something done with Marco Rossi. But at this point, it's just the overall, like the isolated thing of bringing in Evander Kane's not the end of the world. Again, as you're saying, 1 year, $5.125 million. It's just more so the Vancouver of just sticking in mediocrity, sticking in mid. Utah, I think, is going to be far better than Vancouver next season. Can we agree on that, especially after getting Peterka? You would pick Utah ahead? Utah was 89 points. I think Vancouver was 90.
I
2?
think so. For me, the biggest factor on Vancouver, which is not something the GM has control over either way, is can Thatcher Demko be A, healthy,
Mhm.
B, kind of
Yeah.
look like the older version of him from 2023? If he is, Vancouver can be 7 points better than last year, even if on paper they're a worse team, just because they're improving from below average goaltending to consistent above average goaltending. That's a risk.
That is
If
fair,
it
but
doesn't happen, Vancouver will be worse. Yeah. If
yeah,
Demko
I
is
mean, you
just
got to
who
hope that the
Demko
Calgary Flames are
was,
worse as well. But other teams in the Pacific should be getting better. San Jose is still going to be bad, don't get me wrong, but should be a far better team. Anaheim should, on paper, at least be a better team next season, whether that goaltending will be the same. I just think, as someone that was a fan of the New York Islanders under Lou Lamoriello for the last 3 seasons, I'm seeing Lou Lamoriello kind of moves just to keep this team perfectly average. And I understand that they actually have a true superstar compared to the New York Islanders, but it is just mid on mid on mid right now for the Vancouver Canucks, and I don't see anything changing relatively soon, even if Elias Pettersson turns into a number 1 center
I
again.
agree with that. I was just checking their cap sheet because I had a hard time believing it when you said Vancouver only has 7 million cap space.
7
Where
mil,
did the
dude.
money go? Where are they spending all of that? Four and a
I
half
think
mil on an
OEL has,
OEL buyout. Four
yes,
and a half mil on
yeah.
Kevin Lankinen, which I clocked at that time as a
Yes,
Scarbo
9.5 to
Supreme
their tandem.
contract, giving Kevin Lankinen anything.
Well, it's because Demko, I think that they just know Demko's like done
And
at this
Lankinen
point, as
is like
sad as that
a
is.
bang average backup. He's a number. Kevin Lankinen is not a 1B. He's a 2 who happened to have like 2 months of playing
Mhm.
really good this season and somehow parlayed that into a 5-year contract at 1B money. Disgusting.
Yeah, people will look back fondly on your Draft Boys episode of the worst contracts if they see Lakin in there. But yeah, just for Vancouver, perfectly mid in the Pacific Division. Moving on, the Hockey Hall of Fame, the class of 2025 was announced. It was Duncan Keith, Zdeno Chara, Joe Thornton, Alex Mogilny, no Carey Price. Ryan Getzlaff is also first time eligible. Babiak, I'll let you start on this. What's your thoughts of this class, and was Price snubbed?
Okay, so thoughts A, this is a really good class. I don't see how you can argue against any of these 4 or say they're not good enough. B, if you want to say that Carey Price is snubbed, which you're allowed to, you need to tell me which one of these guys you would take off for him.
Mogilny.
Fair, I guess. I can see that logic. I don't think it matters, right?
it's
you
it.
know, the I don't think first ballot Hall of Fame
Mhm.
matters much anyway, but especially because the NHL is a quota sport, right? There are
Mhm.
some sports Hall of Fames where you vote for the guy, yes or no, and some years 4 guys will get in, some years 1 guy gets in. Hockey has a quota of 4 guys, so if you look at a ballot and you see like, oh, I think 6 guys on the ballot this year probably should be in the Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
It is what it is. Carey Price will eventually get in. I refuse to believe that they've let in Mike Vernon and Tom Bracero in recent
So
years
the
and
Vernon
will
one, I
not let
still
Carey
disagree with that
Price in
one.
by that logic. The one thing I do actually want to lock in here, not that I necessarily think Tuukka Rask had a Hall of Fame career, but the combination of Vernon Bracero getting in
Mhm.
recently, plus Carey Price not getting in first ballot, that tells me that these guys care a lot about goalie longevity and don't value the goalie peak so highly. So I don't think Tuukka Rask was going to get in either way, but I would say just based on like reading the room of how the voters look at goalies, they value longevity over peak, and so there's no chance for Tuukka Rask.
Yeah, for him following up, like the fact that he had Tim Thomas right before him, and as a result, he wasn't able to like kind of hit the ground running as a youngster. Only got like 8 or 9 true seasons as a number 1 starter in Boston. I think he's only at like 300 wins. So even though he's had a Vezina, he had another season where he arguably should have won the Vezina. Yeah, I think the longevity is just going to hold him back. On Carey Price and McGillney, yeah, it's tough. If they were both first time eligible, I think we both agree Carey Price easily gets in over him. It's been such a thing with McGillney. I think it's his 16th year being eligible. So as a result, factoring in that, I think it's fair to put Mogilny. I personally still would have went Price, especially when looking at next year's class when it's only Patrice Bergeron. He easily could have just thrown McGinley in that year. Yeah, besides that, I still think Brindamore should be in. I don't know what your opinion is on that. I know maybe not the highest peak, but talk about longevity, even when he's 36, 37, winning back-to-back Selkies, winning a Stanley Cup as like a top 2 forward on a team. So I think he should be in. Zetterberg's going to be a really interesting one because he probably had like about the peak, the 8 to 10 year peak of a Hall of Fame guy, but had to retire a little bit early. So what do you think about Brindamore and Zetterberg?
I'm a strong yes on both of those. I think anyone who's not giving a yes to both of those is valuing just like reading the points on Hockey Reference too much and not appreciating the overall game. Those were both elite two-way players. It's, I don't think either of us have any like real conversation about the 3 first timers that got in, like Thornton,
Easy.
Keith, Chara, all easy locks.
Yeah, they're all top 100 players
year,
of all time.
Yeah, Joe Thornton top maybe like 30-ish.
He was on my 50. Ever. He was like 48th or 49th, I think.
I believe it. Like if you're going to make 40. A list of the best playmakers ever, Joe Thornton as a pure playmaker, legit top 3 in the history of the sport.
Yeah, I think he finished 4th in the Hart in like 2016 at like 35 or 30. So he even had longevity on top of course, that amazing prime.
I want to bring up guys next year. That there are 2 fringe guys I see: Eric Stahl and Phil Kessel.
Not
and
first ballot.
Here's my take on this. I don't think either are first ballot. Just as far as like a yes or no on the Hall of Fame, my gut, my vibe check says it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Stats, not a points leaderboard. Phil Kessel passes that vibe check and Eric Stahl doesn't. But intellectually, there's really no way to make an argument that Kessel should be in and Eric Stahl shouldn't be. They both had, all things considered, their peaks were pretty short. I mean, they played for a long time. They were both effective players for a long time, but their peaks of being like elite top 5, top 10 players for both of those guys, you're looking at like actual top end peaks of like 4 seasons.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I think Eric Stahl's really weird because he started out amazing. Obviously, 2006, I think he had like 45 goals, 55 assists, 100 points, best forward on that Stanley Cup winning team. So I can understand an argument for Stahl just because that one singular season, you could argue he was the top 3 player in the entire sport, maybe. The problem is, if you look at his Hockey Reference, it's like by 2011, like he was not that elite. I don't think that he was like near point per game. Then he went to Minnesota and had like another 3-year peak of being like a legit elite first line center. It's one of the weirder careers of all time. I agree with Kessel. It's tough because he definitely got a bad shake in Toronto in terms of like, he was one of the best play drivers, scorers in the NHL point play period. Just he had dog shit around him for the most part. Then he goes to Pittsburgh where 2016, arguably should have won the Conn Smythe, but was like pretty clearly the 3rd best forward on those teams and didn't offer anything defensively when you compare it to like a Rod Brindamore or Zetterberg, was a net negative defensively. I think for both of them, it's going to have to be 8 to 10 years, and it's going to have to be like an extremely weak class for me to put them in. Like they're not even in the Brindamore Zetterberg tier for me.
That makes sense for Eric Stahl. I feel like Kessel's going to have, fair or not, deserved or not, it feels like Kessel is going to have more buzz around him. Do you agree
because
with
people
that?
love him. Yeah, because people love him.
Like
hot
the
dogs.
media is going to give more love to Kessel.
Yeah, played in Toronto, played with Sidney Crosby. Like that is about as, and he's also just seems like a great guy. That's about as media darling as you're going to find. And I could see them push him over the top. It just stinks that not the best longevity towards the end, was just an empty calorie 40-point guy. And that's why people were like shocked when nobody wanted to sign him. It's like, he just really offers nothing to a team. That's why Vegas benched him in 2023. And as a result, I don't think that he got to 1,000 career points. Not saying you have to get to 1,000 career points, but historically that is kind of the number for forwards, at least, that people say is like the minimum. Unless you have like a peak, obviously.
You also need to factor in, again, that the dead puck era does exist. You know, Kessel was through a significant amount of that. On, the Hockey Reference adjusted points, Kessel's around 1,100.
Yeah, era
so
adjusted.
it does matter to say, like,
Hmm.
well, Brindamore's 1,300 points with most of those in the 90s is very different than Kessel 950 points with most of those in like the immediate
Yeah.
aftermath of the '06 lockout and then into the early mid 2010s. But it's true. If you take the Pittsburgh years away, Phil Kessel has no real argument for the Hall of Fame. He just was not a top player like that. And on those Pittsburgh teams, when he did have his best seasons, he was clearly the third best forward.
Yeah, and I think even with McGillney talking about the era adjusted, like 76 goals in a season, absolutely absurd. But I think era adjusted, it's only like 62, which is still crazy. It's still a lot. But like
No, that's another thing too.
he wasn't
Is
like the
McGillney?
ultimate snub. There is an argument that he had a relatively short prime, and it was in the highest scoring era in NHL history. Where I never understood the argument that it was like an absolute injustice. He should be in, especially considering being the first guy to defect from the Soviet Union. But to act like he's Pavel Datsuk or something like that was always ridiculous.
No, yeah, it's there's the two sides of McGillney are number one, he played in, as you said, the highest scoring era ever. So I think a lot of the comments come from people who straight up were not watching hockey when he was
Mm-hmm.
playing. They're just looking at his stats years later and saying he must have been so great. He was a very good player, but in that era, it was not overly exceptional. That's the case against him. And as you said, also, the case for him is it does matter that it's the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the NHL Hall of
Mm-hmm.
Fame. When you factor in his international contributions for Russia, as well as the fact that he defected from Russia, that's
Mm-hmm.
an influential thing. That stuff should have pushed him over the edge a while ago, I feel.
Yeah, and speaking of, Ryan Getzlaff's going to get in because he has the famous triple gold.
The
Your
most
favorite,
meaningless
most BS.
accomplishment in
As
sports.
Americans, we do not like that. Is the most Canadian made up, like just point for them to eventually make the Hall of Fame. What about Curtis Joseph and Pecorine? Cujo never won a Vezina. I think he won like 450 games. Was a consistent top five goalie. Rene has that Vezina. I think he's at like 380 wins. Has another. I think he has two or three other Vezina finalists, but no Stanley Cups. Do you think that they're Hall of Famers eventually?
Cujo, yes, eventually. I mean,
It's tough with no Vezina. It's tough.
it's
But
it's
Luongo didn't
tough.
have one either. I know Luongo had
Yeah,
better numbers, but
he it's one of those things where you do need to adjust for the era, and Cujo
mm-hmm.
was, one of the top, there's a clear top three goalies of the live puck era. I feel pretty comfortable calling Cujo number four.
Yeah.
Clearly a couple tiers behind Roy, Hasek, Brodeur, but put up very good numbers in an era where no goalies were putting up good
Yeah,
numbers.
he was kind of like
He did it.
Ed Belfour, a slightly worse Ed Belfour with not as much team success and maybe more
No, yeah,
consistency
I
too.
would put Cujo over Ed Belfour because you do need to factor in every team Curtis Joseph played for was complete dog shit.
Yeah,
You
that is
need to
fair. That
account for
is
that.
fair. But I think that
The Leafs when he played there were terrible. The Oilers post tearing down terrible.
yeah,
Um,
I think I'll have a shot next year.
Rene
I think
Rene
Rene's
is
ahead of a
like
Rask for sure. I would maybe put him in, man. Like the Nashville Predators were more competent than the Cujo teams, but those early to mid 2010s until like 2017, 2016, they were nothing special. Rene really just kept them afloat. And in 2017, he had one of the best playoff runs. I think he had like a 930, although he didn't get the Stanley Cup. He carried that team. Like the playoff numbers, I think, are pretty solid on Rene. Not now. I think he's only been eligible for 2 to 3 years. But I think if weaker classes come up, he's should potentially get in.
I'm open to it, but I don't agree with you at all dismissing Nashville. Those Nashville teams, even before
They
they
were
had a
good
lot of team
defensively, but
success, had very good defenses. Weber, who was traded into Subban, Yossi, Ryan Suter, Ekholm,
yeah,
Seth Jones for a couple years. He was not at his peak there, but he was like a helpful contributor in a second pair role there.
yeah.
Seth
By
Jones,
the mid
that was like
2010s, they
big
figured it
names.
out. But before that, it was kind of just the Rene show for a while in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm leaning no, but I
That's fair.
also think it depends how things stack out in the future, right? Like how many goalies with his longevity will be there in the future because there does seem to be sort of a trend of less and less goalies having those long careers these days versus 15, 20 years ago. And if that trend continues, just for a cross-sport comparison, you see it in baseball with pitchers. Like, the pitchers in baseball these days don't play as long as the ones 20 years ago, so there's no longevity and you need to change your Hall of Fame standards. If hockey goalies go that way and it's leaning in that direction this decade, then we might be looking at this in like the class of 2035. Wow, there's not a single eligible goalie with Rene's longevity.
When it's Sorokin versus Rene for a spot, they go with Rene instead. Last guy, Patrick Elias. For my opinion, Hall of very good. He had one season where he was like a true star, but outside of that, he was the top forward on very good Devils teams. But I just don't think he had quite the prime or even the longevity to get in. You could maybe argue based off team success. I can understand that. But for me, no. Those Devils teams had some Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I think arguing off team success in his case is very stupid, straight up. For real, those teams, that core of the Devils that won 3 Stanley Cups, made another finals in like a 7-year stretch. That whole class of Devils had 3 Hall of Famers. Patrick Elias is a very good player who happened to be on the same team as those 3 Hall of Famers. He clearly was less important to those teams' success than Brodeur or
Stevens,
Niedermeyer, Stevens. Even McGillney, right, was on one of those Devils Cup winning teams for a minute there.
Yeah.
Elias, Hall of very good. I agree.
All right, we're going to move on. Now we're going to talk about a future Hall of Famer. It was looking like he might have been eligible next season if he didn't come back and play. But Jonathan Toews is heading to the Winnipeg Jets. My initial thoughts, I saw $2 million. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good deal. There's a lot of freaking bonus money, $550,000 after 20 regular season games, 30, 40, 50, 60. If they make the playoffs and he plays 50 games, it's 500,000. And then some like performance bonuses based on the playoffs. But if he hits those, you're not going to be too mad. Yeah, it's like $5 million if they just make the playoffs and he plays 60 games. For me, it's just far too much. Given the fact that it's not like, oh, if he hits 30 points, 40 points, 50 points, I can get behind those kind of bonuses. But if he's just an okay 4th line center and you end up spending $4 million, whether that gets all applied this season or next season, it's just far too much for a guy that in 2022, in 2023 was just like a half a point per game, 50-point guy. He can be an okay 3rd line center, very good 4th line center. I understand you maybe want the leadership, but I mean, at this point, Winnipeg has a lot of veteran guys that maybe don't have much playoff success, but they have been there. Just too much relying on the past for this deal. And especially considering a guy like Nikolai Ehlers is going to leave, I have massive concerns about how their 2nd line center will hold up. And if you're relying on that being Jonathan Toews, you're in big boy trouble. What do you think?
We started off this episode with so much disagreeing, and now I feel like we're agreeing on everything. Jonathan Toews is in his mid-30s and hasn't played hockey in 2 full years. Maybe he's good. Maybe he comes back and he looks great and it's fine and it works out. But I kind of doubt it, frankly. I would be very surprised if he's anything more than like an okay defensive more than offensive 3C. I think that's the most likely outcome here. If he's better than that, great, but that seems very ambitious, very hoping on the past. And it's possible that once he actually starts playing games 2-3 times a week, he just physically cannot hang, which, Winnipeg is giving themselves that out with the scaling up by games played if he just can't hang. But, if that's the case, then you do need more firepower in that top 6 with Ehlers leaving. And
the thing is
not going to give you that.
It's not, and we'll talk about the Jamie Benn deal that he signed today. It's not like it's $1 million, basically the league minimum base. So like if come game 11, they're like, this guy kind of stinks. We're just going to throw him up in the press box. You're still giving him $2 million. Not saying it's going to make or break the Winnipeg Jets like season, but it's not like it's that much of low risk. You're still burning something on that. Maybe there is a situation where he just plays a game here and there and then ramps up come playoff time and he only plays 34 games or something like that. And it's only a $3 to $3.5 million cap hit. But yeah, just the way that this is structured is so weird. I don't know how he had this much leverage as a guy that missed the 2021 season, then for 2 years was completely mediocre. All of his highlights that I'm seeing on Twitter are from the Obama administration. I tweeted that out. Like it's a lot relying on what happened prior. Like Patrick Kane, when he joined the Red Wings, there was serious concern over his hip, but he still was objectively one of the most skilled playmakers, one of the most skilled hands in the entire NHL. Jonathan Toews, we have no idea. Like, I don't even know if he's been skating consistently the past few years. He went to like India for 6 months or something like that. Like, it is being away from the game for 2 years when you're already in your mid 30s. It's not like he's 29 years old and something happened to him. He's 37. So even like the aging curve based on what happened in his 2023 season would put him at an okay third line center right now on top of not playing for 2 years.
Yeah, this is definitely high risk. The $2 million is not enough to make or break a team's cap structure, but it is enough that the Winnipeg Jets probably won't try to get a real Ehlers replacement, right? They're not going to spend big bucks on a guy you can instantly slot in on the wing and score 60 points to replace Ehlers with, because they're thinking in the back of their heads, we're penciling in Toews is going to cost like 3 something, 4 something. That's enough where spending $7 million on Brock Besser to replace Ehlers wouldn't work.
Yeah. Again, it's like he's a hometown kid. He hasn't played in 2 years, and you might be giving him 1 year, $5.5 million just to make the playoffs and play 60 games and be your fourth line center. Maybe it works out. But for me, it's just too wild given the circumstances for him to have that much leverage. Like the Jamie Benn also one has like $3 million. Well, that's actually what we're going to kind of get into next, the Dallas of it all. But this one for a guy that has been in India for months at the time in the last 2 years, I'm not a fan.
The hometown kid thing could end up working against them too, because
they're going to sell a lot of jerseys though. They probably already have. That is a positive.
Let's say he plays 10 or 15 games and looks completely terrible. He's clearly not an NHL player. Let's just, suppose that happens. That's a possibility. If that happens, now you need to sell your own fan base on the hometown kid, the future Hall of Famer. We're going to healthy scratch him for 60 games this year. And that's a really tough sell. If we're assuming that Toews is going to be their best-selling jersey this year, that's a really tough sell on the fans.
Yeah, and it would have a ripple effect of like, why would any veteran that's from the area or just any veteran in general want to go there? If they're treating Jonathan Toews like that, justifiably or not, like it's definitely it's a decent risk by Winnipeg bringing him in.
Yes, it's a risk in several ways. It's a risk if it doesn't work out. It's a risk if he's like healthy and okay-ish and he's just fine, like the baseline of okay.
Yeah.
Now you have like $3 million bonus cap spillover to next year and you actually need the money to sign your own guys.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm definitely going to be watching more Winnipeg Jets games. But now we're going to pivot into the Mason Marchment and Burakovsky trades, as well as the Dallas effect that it had on it. So initially, Marchment goes to the Seattle Kraken for a third and a fourth-round pick. We're kind of just going to combine this all into one. And Burakovsky then goes to Chicago for Joe Veleno. Up first, the Marchment trade. I really like it for Seattle when looking at it. A third and a fourth round pick for a guy that was pretty underwhelming and kind of a liability for the playoffs for the Dallas Stars. He did have 47 points in 62 games in the regular season, only making $4.5 million. Like, I know that apparently he wanted to go to a no state income tax, but Vancouver maybe should have been looking to potentially do this trade because, yeah, I think Mason Marchment come in, play with Matty Beniers or Shane Wright, be around the 45 to 50 point pace guy, and you can easily ship him out the following deadline for a second round pick. As for the Burakovsky part of this, 2 years at 5.5, it's kind of insane that Chicago just took him on full, considering how bad he's been the last 2 seasons. He had 39 points in 49 games his first season in Seattle, but has not been able to stay healthy. This year, only like 37 points, 10 goals. At 5.5, he's a legit 3.5 to 4 million injury risk at this point. I understand that maybe, like we talked about with Kane, they don't want to give someone big money in free agency, and this is lower risk than the Vancouver one because Chicago still doesn't have like jack shit for expectations. But yeah, the fact that they didn't get some kind of mid-round pick to take him on, like the market, you talk about 2 to 3 years ago when my Islanders were giving up a second-round pick just to dump Josh Bailey's 1 year at $5 million. Like it's crazy. Not going to make a break the Chicago Blackhawks, but I think that this is really good work by the Seattle Kraken. Now, Joe Veleno's going to be nothing. He's what? He was a first-round pick back in the day.
No, I agree.
Yeah, 2018.
Joe Veleno is. I do want to lock in here. Actually, I have thoughts.
You have Joe Veleno thoughts. You have
I do, because he was granted exceptional player status, was he not?
Yeah, he's not the worst one. Sean Day is.
But he is the peak of a guy who has produced literally nothing at any level of hockey worth caring about, yet some of these GMs, some of these fans are still holding on hope of, when he was 15, he was better than the other 15-year-olds he played against, as if that means literally anything. He's a colossal bust, complete failure of his potential, and
he ended up
the
only
only
going
reason
like
anyone even cares about who he is or is giving him any opportunities is because he was the most hyped 15-year-old that year.
Can we talk about the players that actually matter in this trade, please?
Yeah,
instead of a Joe Veleno route.
Do any of these players really matter?
I think Marchment's a solid player, 6'5", decently skilled.
Marchment is better than Burakovsky, and he's cheaper than Burakovsky.
In less term,
so in that sense, Seattle wins. Does it matter that Seattle wins? I don't think so. I mean, Seattle wasn't a playoff team. They upgraded their number 3 left wing position. Yeah. They're still not going to be a playoff team. Okay.
I saw some people be like,
Dallas, I'll go real quick here. We're
about to get into Dallas.
For Dallas, it's fine. It's whatever. Mason Martin, they need to cut cap salary.
Calories?
Calories. Yeah.
Cut season?
Luka Doncic, cut those calories.
Yeah.
Now, Mason Marchment was the easiest guy to get rid of because he doesn't really matter to the team that the Dallas Stars have built, but you also don't need to attach an asset to get rid of him the way that Matt Dumba or Lyubushkin will cost picks to get rid of. So for Dallas, it's fine. For Chicago, I also think it's fine. I don't love it. I mean, like you said, it feels like there's this weird disconnect where now that the cap is going up, some teams have convinced themselves that, okay, there's no such thing as a bad contract anymore because the cap is going up.
Short term, we're good.
You don't need to ask for draft picks to take bad salary because the cap is going up. No, salary still matters. You should still get something back for having low value contracts like that.
Yeah, it should have cost at least like a 3rd round pick to get rid of Burakovsky attached to Veleno, unless they actually value Veleno, which I refuse to believe.
No one other than his 7th grade hockey coach should value Veleno. But I don't hate it for Chicago because it is clear that running like this full tank team with no NHL talent whatsoever was holding back Connor Bedard's development. And while I'm not high on Burakovsky, he is a real NHL wing, and Chicago has like a total of 4 of those in the system. So they just went up from like 4 actual NHL wings to 5. They need more of those. Connor Bedard is never going to improve if you can't give him some.
Yeah, it's definitely better than giving out a 5 to 6 year deal to some mediocre person that I kind of did last offseason with Tyler Bertuzzi and Teravainen. On the Dallas front, yeah, Marchment only had 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points in 18 games, and took some really dumb penalties, especially in the Western Conference Finals. It stinks because in the regular season he's at least positive value and maybe could turn it around in the playoffs, but the forward core is like their biggest strength. They could definitely lose a Mason Marchment. Maybe it drops them from the best forward core to 2nd or 3rd. But if anything, it's going to give a guy that we're going to talk about soon, Maverick Bourque, more potential within that forward core. Yeah, I think that it's just really good work by Seattle to basically swap out for $1 million cheap in less term. Dallas, they were able to sign their guys, which we're about to talk about. The fact they were able to sign Duchesne to a 4-year deal at $4.5 million, Maverick Bourque to $950,000 somehow, and Jamie Benn, a 1x1, which is also a Jonathan Toews kind of bonus structure based on games played. It could be as much as $3 million if he plays 60 games. Duchesne deal will start there. I like it a lot. Obviously, he was like point per game this season, was a little bit underwhelming in the playoffs. I don't think that it's this like generational fleece, like no state income tax strikes again, because he is 34 years old. He wasn't good in the playoffs. 4 years till he's 38. That is a possibility that by then they're going to have to dump him or something like that. But at the end of the day, in the near term, that is all that Dallas cares about, considering the Mikko Rantanen deal really put them in the middle of going all in. So from that angle, you got to like it a decent amount. What do you think on Duchesne?
No, you don't gotta.
You
I do
don't
not
like it.
No,
you
I don't.
$4.5 million. That's like third line money.
$4.5 million for a point per game in the regular season sounds really good. $4.5 million for 0 even strength points in the playoffs is really bad.
That's fair, but
Duchesne put up a goose egg with a minus 12 in the postseason.
Would you rather
really
bet on
bad.
Duchesne to turn that around or spend that 4.5 somewhere in free agency?
I don't have a great answer there one way or the other, but I do think either Duchesne has reached an age where he can't keep up with playoff intensity, or he's reached miles on his body where once you start playing 90 games, 100 games in a season, he can't handle it. Either way, I don't expect Duchesne to improve at all in future playoffs. I don't know about literal goose egg scoring.
Yeah, I think, but again, at $4.5 million, as long as he can be half a point per game in the playoffs, I think that's okay. Matt Duchesne should not be make it or break it for this team's playoff runs. They need Wyatt Johnson to step up. They need Maverick Bourque to continue to develop. I think Duchesne by the second year of this is probably going to be on the third line because of all the young guys that they have. So I don't think it's that much.
No, you're right about that. That the way Dallas is set up, Duchesne just has to be a pretty good passenger to make it work. I'm just not so confident he can be.
Fair. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that it's this next level amazing steal that people are screaming about because there is serious age in playoffs performances struggles.
And just real quick, because Jamie Benn had all of those same playoff struggles. And he's also an older player who I don't like. As far as, not that I don't like him, but like I don't like his chances of.
He's washed.
Like, he's definitely washed. I mean, I don't think.
I think Stars fans admit that Jamie Benn is fucking washed.
I mean, but I did write down in my notes, because I wrote notes for this before I saw the Ben contract, which came in very recently. Based on age and playoff performance, if he wants anything over like $2 million, I'd tell him to take a hike. The exact note I wrote. So $1 million with potential to get up to 3, depending on games played. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine for him. I like that structure. Okay.
I think that they might like load manage him. He's a guy that would benefit by just like taking 10 to 20 games off midway through the season 1 or 2 times. Like he has,
I agree.
The mileage on his body is absolutely insane. Yeah.
And they gave themselves as a team incentive to manage him.
Yeah, it's one of those things where maybe it's like, oh, if injuries happen, we'll get you to hit that. But if we're safely in a playoff spot come December, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's sit you out and get you well rested for the playoffs. Maverick Bourque, though, $950,000. I understand that he hasn't been dominant at the NHL level, 25 points in 73 games. But based on what this guy did in the AHL, and he only played like 12 minutes and still had that production, that's the one where I'm like, it's not even the no state income tax. I guess he just really likes it in Texas. He knows that he's going to have a role that's going to continue to expand ahead of guys like Matt Duchesne on this roster. But yeah, that's brilliant by Jim Nill, getting him under $1 million.
You look at it like brilliant for Jim Nill. I look at it like Maverick, fire your agent.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Doing?
But I
believe in yourself. If this man wanted to shop the market for offer sheets, I refuse to believe
he would have got the 2x2.2. Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, in fairness, it might be from
I'm not sure.
A bad team.
I'm not even sure he has a path to a bigger role, right? Will he have a much bigger role this year? I mean, maybe he cracks consistent top 6 minutes, but they seem kind of set with Hintz, with Wyatt Johnston, with Duchesne's going to play more minutes than Bourque this year, I'm sure.
I think he's going to be the consistent third line center, probably.
So how is he going to play enough as a consistent third line center?
This year he was like the fourth line center.
Play enough to increase his value?
This year he was like the fourth line center, though.
I hate everything about it for Bourque. Look, maybe Bourque doesn't care about making money and just wants to have fun playing hockey with his friends and be on a winner. But he could have got more money than this.
Definitely.
He could have got a bigger role than this, which would have set him up for more money in the future.
But again,
I don't like this from him at all.
Yeah, that is fair. But if he was signing an offer sheet, there's a decent chance that it was some young up and coming team that God knows if you're ever going to have any team success. God knows if they're going to develop you properly. Versus Dallas has been an elite development spot for forwards. He looks at Jason Robertson. He looks at Jason Robertson. He looks at Hintz. He looks at Wyatt Johnston, and he says, "That's my path. I can get to that level, hopefully."
I can't guarantee anything about potential team success somewhere else, but based on the precedent of what Dylan Holloway did in St. Louis, I do feel pretty okay that, hey, you young guys who aren't getting big roles on these stacked contenders, taking a bigger role with a worse team absolutely can work out for you. It worked out great for Dylan Holloway. He has real value now.
That is fair, but again, I just think Maverick Bourque, Edmonton is like the anti-development place, though, if that makes sense. Like compared to Dallas, Edmonton obviously has the top three picks that they had that eventually panned out. But besides that, they haven't been able to develop him. So Holloway was probably like, I'm going to be stuck in the bottom six. Versus Bourque says, okay, I can be a third line center next year on a team that's going to be 100 and go deep in the playoffs. And my role will only continue to grow considering Ben's getting up there in age. Duchesne's getting up there in age. If they bring back Granlund, he's pretty old. There's a path. Versus Edmonton, there's been a graveyard of young forwards that have came in and never properly developed.
That's all true. That's all true, but nothing's going to convince me on this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, some of these hockey players just need to believe in themselves and bet on themselves.
Yeah, if you told me a 1 year deal, I would have said 1 year, 1.75 for him. That I could have understood. A little bit lower than what an offer sheet was. It's the same thing as Thomas Harley. I mean, Thomas Harley had 1 year of NHL, but he had 47 points, and he signed 2 years, $4 million. That was nuts. Meanwhile, Broberg got the freaking 4x6 on the open market. We're going to move on back to the Chicago Blackhawks. Ryan Donato, 4 years, $4 million. I called this a B. I graded it a B. People came up my throat. He had a career high of 31 points before this season, then puts up 61 points, shooting 17%, playing 16:30 a night compared to being a consistent third liner throughout his career. I think that he's going to be an effective third liner. Like if he's still playing a serious top six role on this team in 2 to 3 years, Kyle Davidson has pretty massively failed in terms of development and talent acquisition. Yeah, it's okay. He's 28, or I think he might even be 29 years old by now. It's better than what I was expecting. I was expecting a 5x5 or something like that. After the career year, Kyle Davidson did a good job negotiating here, but I think he's like a 20 and 20 guy, not a 30 and 30 guy. So it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, 20 and 20 would be his second best season ever. Clear
second best season.
15 and 15 would be tied for his second best season ever. Yeah, I mean, I think we both kind of expected that, the cap spike plus the random 30 goal, 60 point equals someone is about to give Ryan Donato a stupid deal in free agency. And what this tells me is that Donato's agent made some calls around the league to see what his market would be. And what he found out was literally every team agrees that your season was a fluke. Like, no, for real. I mean,
I agree.
If Donato's agent had any ambition that he could get a bigger contract than this on the open market,
and a team that should be better short-term than Chicago.
No way should you sign a 4x4 with Chicago, right? Test the open market. And if you don't like anything, Chicago will still be there. Chicago will still have cap room. Chicago will still have holes in their lineup. You can circle back there. So the fact that he signed this before the market opened tells me that, calls were made and literally no one was interested in paying Ryan Donato. Everyone agrees he's a third liner with a random fluke, but we all know it's a fluke. So whatever. Through that lens, it's fine. It's decent. It's not a great deal. Like an A deal is either an amazing surplus value, which Ryan Donato is not, or like a guy who will help your team in the playoffs, which, this team is not going to be in the playoffs. And if they are, Ryan Donato will not be why. So it's not an A grade deal, but it's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
I'd go with a B+. If he's just 20 and 20, 23 and 23, that's good value. But The fact that everybody just looks to 30 and 30, like we got to do a little bit digging on this player, on his history. I just refuse to believe at 28, everything clicked. And now he's a consistent, good top 6 forward, elite, or something like that. His role is going to come down on Chicago once some of their young guys come up to the NHL level, and rightfully so. But they paid him like a depth, like a middle sixer. So I'm not even trying to discredit it, but to act like this is going to be $2 to $3 million of surplus value every single year is a little bit unrealistic.
No, I mean, if he's like a Trent Frederick level player,
back to Trent
you win.
All right, Fabian Zetterlund, 3 years, $4.25 million. I like this one a decent amount. I know that he didn't play the best in Ottawa. The underlying numbers were still pretty good, but could not get jack dick for puck luck. I think he had like 4 points in 22 games. But the prior 2 seasons in San Jose was 20 and 20. He's a big boy. For Ottawa, I think you just stick him in your middle 6 and he can give you 20 and 20, much like we talked about with Ryan Donato, with maybe a little bit more of upside because he is only 25 or 26 years old. But yeah, maybe for Ottawa, I said it when it happened, when he struggled. Like in the long run, this was kind of a good thing that he struggled for 20 games because I think they were able to get him for a decent number versus if he played very good and they were still going to lose in the first round to the Toronto Maple Leafs or in the second round. And then it would have been a 5-year deal at 5.5. So I think Ottawa's going to get some surplus value on this. I'd give this also a B plus or an A minus, though. I'm not acting like it's some absolute steal, but I liked him when he was in New Jersey, and I think he's going to fit in a solid role in Ottawa.
I'm really unconvinced here, and I was a fan of the trade when Ottawa made it. I like him in New Jersey. I like him in San Jose. You didn't trade a ton to get him. He has real upside, good value, decent goal scorer, decent all around player. Good physicality. There's a lot to like here with Zetterlund. Then he actually starts playing games in Ottawa, including playoffs, 5 points in 26 games in Ottawa. So good. I don't know. I mean, that's not good. That's that's AHL numbers right there. Like, I think this contract will probably work out in the long run. I think Zetterlund will figure it out, be a half point a game player. But it is worth saying that, what Ottawa saw of Zetterlund this past season was not worth $4 million.
Definitely
if
not.
He plays like this again next year, it's a negative value contract that you're going to be burying in the AHL or buying out. So I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Zetterlund will improve a ton, but there's risk there. It's not a low risk thing, right? Because we've seen what Zetterlund's floor is, and it's pretty concerning.
Yeah. You just got to hope that full training camp with the team, he can make something work in terms of chemistry instead of just getting inserted at the deadline. Not trying to make a total excuse for him. He's got to be better. But yeah, I think it's only going to be up here from Zetterlund. He is like kind of the ideal middle 6 forward when you talk about that physicality. Similarly to Donato, I don't expect him to be some kind of massive surplus value, but for a team that needs forward depth within their middle 6 and kind of a little bit of oomph, I think he fits in really good in Ottawa. They're just going to need him to play to find some chemistry with a Dylan Cousins or Ridley Gregg in terms of whoever he's playing with his center. But I like it. Maybe I'm just Ottawa biased as usual, but Zetterlund's always been a guy I'm decently high on.
No, I mean, it's on paper, it's a good fit. I said when they made the trade, it's a good fit. It's just, it's tough for me to get on that page right now because, and it's, again, small sample size. It's a small sample size for sure. Zetterlund will have all the chance in the world to turn this around. But from what we've actually seen that's actually happened on the ice, just a huge gap between the fit and then what's actually happening.
Yeah, he was legit worth like $1.5 million based on the production. The underlying numbers were not like a 42% expected goal.
No, they weren't horrible underlying numbers, but the production wasn't there.
We're gonna go on to some league-wide topics before we dive into the draft, which I guess is also league-wide. But the new CBA is apparently getting finalized. It's basically done according to Frank Saravalli. Some of the things that include are an 84-game regular season, no player dress codes anymore. Instead of 8 years for teams that can re-sign players, give them 8 years. It's now going to drop to 7 years, and for free agents, 6 years. They're getting rid of the LTIR loophole, and they're doing full-time emergency backup goalies. This just dropped. My thoughts, I think the 84-game regular season is pretty stupid. Yes, they are reducing the amount of preseason games. That's how they're justifying it. But nobody gives a shit about the preseason games. Players aren't trying that hard. Yeah, in a season that already spans from early October to like late June, adding 2 more games on top of that, it's regular season, and they're taking away the preseason games. I just don't like it. It should be going down, if anything, considering how fast the game is, how physical the game is, the amount of injuries that occur throughout a season. Not a fan of it. I don't think it's going to make or break the sport, but it's definitely underwhelming to see just like the owners get another home game. What do you think about the 84 games?
I like the schedule aspect of it in the sense that right now the like structure of schedule, how many times you play which team, is like this contrived, confusing mess.
That
In the
is fair.
future, it'll be very straightforward. You get 2 games against the other conference, 3 games against the other division, 4 games within your division. The numbers all work out perfectly. So like in that sense, it's nice. Part of me does miss how in the old structure of the league, you used to play teams within your division like
I
6
think
times a
I
year.
would.
Now,
I want
some
to see
people
that
can
so
argue
much
that's
more.
excessive, but
No.
it helped build rivalries when you play teams like that much.
Also,
So
if
I
you're doing
think
the
having
divisional
like
seeding, you should play your freaking divisional team a lot more if you can be the 3 seed in your division and make the playoffs over a team that's the 6 seed but has a better record. So I think that they should jack up the amount of divisional games.
yeah, so I think that's a decent change then. Like the New Jersey Devils should be playing the New York Rangers more than they play the Ottawa Senators.
Mm.
That should be happening every year. The fact that it's like up to chance and a random lottery how the games shake out within
Yeah.
conference right now, I don't love that. More money is more money. You know, the players did agree to this. If the players were a hard no on 84 games, they would have said no. They're negotiating this.
I just feel
They're
like this
happy
is
with
if you
it.
give a
They'll
mouse
take
a
more
cookie.
money.
It's going to be 86 in a couple of years, then 88, then that.
I don't know. The NHL used to be an 84 game season.
I know, but I'm saying now, I think it's gonna. I would not be shocked if in 15 years it's 86 or 88.
It's possible.
The NFL is already going 18, and that's the most violent sport on earth. But yeah, I think you're just opening the door for a little bit of rising. The LTIR loophole, I assume you don't have some controversial take that you would like that. That's obviously a big plus if they just allow the salary cap to carry over into the playoffs, so we don't have teams on unequal footing in terms of some teams $10 million over the salary cap. That's awesome. That's a big plus. I'll take that trade for 84 games.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one. I mean, I'm definitely in the camp of people who are like, it's annoying when fans talk about it.
Because every team could have done it, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, fans should shut up about it, get over it. Like, it's not like the league is rigged for Vegas or Tampa or whoever. Like, anyone is allowed to do that, and several teams have done that.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Everyone's
you just
doing
gotta be
it,
ruthless.
but just shutting it down completely is for the best.
Yeah, something else interesting. They're reducing the amount of signing bonus money. It can only be 60% of like the annual amount that you give to somebody. So like Toronto, New York, like loads it up with signing bonuses compared to like the other teams kind of just wait and pay it throughout the year. That's something interesting that I guess just equals the playing field a little bit more.
Yeah, that's seems like a net positive change. There's not a ton of ways for big markets to throw their weight around because it is a hard cap league. That's one of them, and they're shutting that down. Okay, fine.
Yeah, people are going to be mad, but they're not making the no state income taxes pay. No player dress code. I'm looking forward to that. I feel like it's not going to be the NBA wearing like Kyle Kuzma level fits or something like that. But it's going to be cool for them to express themselves a little bit more. And some of the guys do already, like David Pastrnak, but they're going to be able to go just a little bit further.
I would like for it to be fun. I think they're mostly too boring to have fun with it, but we'll see.
All right, now we're going to talk about the 2025 NHL draft. Some guys that we think are going to go way too high. Some guys that we think are going to be absolute steals. Babiak, who's the one guy that you think is going to be a massive reach?
Reach. So I got 2 guys on the list here. I mean, it's Porter Martone, not like a massive reach, but I'm so thoroughly convinced that Frondell and Higgins should be 3 and 4. If Martone is getting drafted when either of those guys are still on the board, whoever's taking Martone is taking a huge reach. Martone was the total non-factor in the internationals he played. Not fond of that. He's clearly not a great skater, which you can be successful in this league without being a great skater. But like, he has one flaw that just stares you down in the face in a way that no one else in that top tier does. And like, skating doesn't get better, frankly. Usually,
his skating has gotten better.
examples.
If you hear the scouts, they said that he was like one of the worst skaters they have ever seen 2 to 3 years ago. Like, he was horrendous.
Most skaters don't get significantly better. No, I mean, it's
never going to be a plus.
There are plenty of examples of guys who, you know, are bad skaters and they adapt and find ways to be successful working around it. Jason Robertson's one, Mark Stone. There's plenty of examples of those, but like, none of those guys developed good skating at the NHL level. They just worked around it there. So that's the one thing, which is like an asterisk, kind of like a funny for fun pick. And then the other, I'm going to need you to hold my hand trying to pronounce his name. Radim, several consonants here.
Murtka. You don't like Murtka?
I don't.
I've kind of cooled off on him.
It feels like a yearly event now that everyone sees a European D-man and, oh, he's 6'6". He's a fucking giant. We absolutely must draft him in the 6 to 10 range. And it's like, okay, well, how is he at like playing hockey? Is his positioning good? Is his puck sense good? Can he make a breakout pass? And, you know, oh, those questions don't really matter because he's big. He'll be great. I am completely unconvinced by him.
That's fair. I liked Murtka early on, but when I really started to watch him, I feel like the offense isn't quite there that the points suggest that he had 35 points in 43 games. I think he's very good defensively. I think he should go top 15, maybe top 12. I think Pittsburgh won't let him go past number 12, so I think you're kind of cooking with that. He was 14th on my board, I think. But yeah, as you mentioned, the size is such a factor with him, and I think teams are going to fall in love with like right-handed defensemen, as we talked about with Mike Kesselring, that is very valued in the NHL nowadays. So I easily could see him going extremely high.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's off the board like early, and like,
Seattle, I think, is where it starts potentially for him.
Potential is like the potential is he's the first defenseman off the board. Seattle gets him at, what do they have? 8, 7? Mm-hmm. Which one does Seattle
8.
have? Yeah.
8.
So like, if that's the pick there and he's the first defenseman off the board, massive reach.
Yeah. My first reach, I do like the player, but I think he's going to go very, very high, and that is Cameron Reed. I think a lot of teams like him a decent amount, but he's only 6 foot, only 170 pounds. I think he can be a good offensive defenseman, but I think he easily could go in the 13 to 16 range. And I personally wouldn't take him there. I don't have as much disdain as you have to like Porter Martone or Radim Murtka, but I just feel like people are going to be like, he could be our undersized, great offensive defenseman. And I just didn't really see that when I watched him. The other guys, of course, Brady Martin, if he ends up going top 6, I think that's just absolutely ridiculous because the high-end skill is not quite there. I get that the physicality is very intriguing. If you could be your own Sam Bennett, but if you're selecting a Sam Bennett at top 6, that your rebuild is probably not going to work. Like if you're relying on him, Sam Bennett works when he gets traded for absolutely nothing to your team and you have other legit stars on his wing. Sam Bennett doesn't work when he has to truly be one of your core pieces.
Yeah, agree there. That's one where I think we're basically on the same page, and it's just, I'm so confused about where exactly he's going to go. There's no consistency in like mock drafts. I mean, yeah. I've seen more than one person suggest Utah take him at 4. If that happens, throw out everything I said because that's clearly the biggest reach of the draft. I've also seen several other mocks that have, you know, in the like 11 to 14 range. And there it's like, okay, he has probably a higher floor than anyone else you're drafting on the board at 12. So
yeah, I think I had him 11th. I think I would actually move him back. I would move Jackson Smith ahead of him. Now I think about it, more to 11th and him 12th on my personal rankings. I don't hate him, especially in this draft. After the top 10, there's really no stars for the most part, or at least have like legit star upside. So I would definitely look for him in that range, and I might even co-sign it at that point. But yeah, I'm looking at 4th, Utah. I'm looking at 7th, Boston, Don Sweeney. I could definitely see him getting selected there. In that case, I just do think it is far too early for me.
Yeah, if that happens, it's too early. It's again, it depends what you're looking at, right? If he's there, he's a reach. If Pittsburgh ends up with him at 11 or 12, I think that's fine.
Yeah. Who's some guys that you think are going to end up falling that you like?
I love Victor Eklund. I love anyone
Mm-hmm.
who's proven to be decent in a men's league, which Victor Eklund has. People seem to think he's going to fall to 10 or lower, which surprises me. I'd rather have
I
Eklund
think
than Brady Martin, than Jake O'Brien. He certainly has a better floor than Roger McQueen, who I'm not a Roger McQueen hater, but there's a huge risk there, obviously. So
mm-hmm.
I'd be kind of surprised if all of those guys get taken before Eklund. Um, I do genuinely believe in Kashawn Aitchison.
High floor guy.
Uh, yeah, it's weird because like the book on him is, you know, oh, scouting report. He's a throwback defenseman. He's a physical defensive
Kevin
defenseman.
BX 2.0.
I don't know.
Like,
Based on the actual production, like, is there evidence that he's a worse offensive player than Jackson Smith? Or is that just like a vibe thing there? Like, what has Jackson Smith proven? Not hating on Jackson Smith.
the goals might 26 goals might not be too sustainable. He has a good shot, don't get me wrong, but his production was a lot of goal based, which I don't know if that's going to translate to the NHL.
No, I mean, it's a lot of puck luck. I'm just looking at it like, you know, again, not hating on Jackson Smith, but I don't think they're in like separate tiers of offense there.
Mm-hmm.
And if the top defenseman off the board or number 2 is Radim Merkta, I certainly think Kashawn is better offensively in the future than him.
Yeah,
so I like
he definitely has
shout.
a way higher floor than them.
And I also want to shout out Sasha Bodmien,
Boumediene.
Boston
Boumediene?
University defenseman. Yeah. Man, I know because the comments like to make fun of me for saying names poorly, even when they're not that tough. There's some tough names in this draft, man.
Yes,
but
definitely.
you know, it's hard to get a read on him one way or the other because Boston U is a very good team, and he was pretty low on that depth chart. You have Hudson, you have Mollander, so who can say? He was phenomenal though in the juniors, right? The U18s. Elite performance there offensively, and the fact that he's playing at, you know, a decent level, decent experience. You know, when I look at the other defensemen in this draft, they're all CHL defensemen at the top end. So you don't how much are they proving defensively necessarily, right? What's the average level of competition they need to defend against? So in that sense, I do trust college defensemen there. And he's being mocked in like the 20s, it seems, mostly. So I think that's a solid value pick if he's going to fall to like the late 20s.
Yeah, he might have like the second or third highest ceiling among defensemen in this draft. I put him ahead of Merca. I put him ahead of Aitchison. Him, and I'd still have Jackson Smith ahead of him. In terms of raw ceiling, yeah, I feel like there's just a lot to like about him. Damn good skater and 6'2" and Swedish. You gotta like that. For me, my first guy, you like Eklund. I like Carter Bear. I also like Eklund a decent amount. But Carter Bear, I think, is just criminally underrated. He was so good this year for Everett. And the fact that everybody's scared because of the Achilles, but it was only lacerated. He was fully skating like a month ago. This kid is just an absolute dog. Like, you have a potential Brandon Hagel, or I compare him to Arturi Lehkonen, just like staring at your face, and you're like, nah, I'm good. I'll take Roger McQueen instead. Bet on the high upside. Take the guy that just does everything at extremely high level. And I've really started to like value like compete level a lot more nowadays, because like I think that is just such a obviously translatable skill to the NHL, how much they give a shit in their physicality. And I just feel like Carter Bear is going to get knocked because he's not small either. He's 6'180" already, but like I feel like people think that he's small, that he plays like not the most NHL. Well, no, he plays the most NHL game. That he's maybe not the most NHL built. And considering that injury, I think he's going to fall a decent amount. Anything past 12th overall, I think is just an absolute steal. He's my number 7 prospect. And then probably the other guy that might fall a decent amount is Colin Potter, best skater in this draft probably, but he is 5'10", 170, so I kind of understand the fall a little bit more. But when you are one of the best skating prospects, and as we talked about before, playing in the NCAAs compared to like the CHL or something like that, played at Arizona State, played against some pretty big dudes, and he was pretty successful, 13 goals. I think he should go decently high as well. I think he's either, it's like, there's such a wide range with him, but with the way that the NHL is trending in terms of physicality, Brady Martin types easily could go like 25th overall, which would be crazy.
Yeah, I want to, I guess, draw attention to where you're saying like the difference between your size or your competing, you're giving a shit, your physicality, ability, because like those aren't the same thing. That's like an easy, lazy way to compare players or talk about players, but it's not a given. I mean, example staring you right in the face, right? Roger McQueen is a big player who doesn't play big.
Martone is honestly that too.
Martone is similar, yeah. Like
not to give you more ammo on Martone, but
I mean, Martone is just like the kind of guy who's going to, get beat in board battles despite his size. That's what he is. McQueen is like the more extreme version of that, where his best case scenario is being Tage Thompson, right? Like that's the peak outcome of a McQueen type. Tage Thompson, he's big, but he doesn't play big. Tage Thompson's like 6'5", but really the best thing about him is his shot, and he moves pretty well given his size. McQueen moves great given his size. He has a pretty solid all-around offensive game. He's not a physical player at all. He's 6'6", and he is not giving you physicality, which is fine. That's fine. You don't need to be physical if you do other things well. But there are definitely some people who don't look into things too much and just, draft based on height, because height equals physicality. The taller the guy, the more Sam Bennett he's going to be, as if Sam Bennett is like a huge guy in his own right.
Yeah, Brady Martin. Yeah, Brady Martin's 6 foot. Bear is 6 foot. Eklund's 5'11", and I would say that those three guys are like the biggest dogs in this draft by a clear margin. Like those are your absolute warriors. And Braden Coots as well, 6 foot, 180 pounds. I think he's very physical and plays bigger than he is.
Like it's any like diss on Eklund in that sense is literally just like stereotypes about Euros, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like,
and even Aitchison's 6'1". He is 200 pounds though.
Eklund is 5'11", and I, like you said, he's more of like a physical dog getting in the board battles than Martone is. Like size doesn't matter in that case because Eklund does that and Martone doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. Who's one team that you think is going to reach? Who's one team that you think is going to get a steal? Put you on the spot with that one. We didn't prep that one.
Oof. Good thing I have the board open right here.
I can go first. I can shoot if you want.
No, I'll go here. I see, I shouted out for a steal, my BU defenseman. I see Philly at 31, a potential landing spot for that. I want Philly to draft okay. They have 3 picks in the first round this year. I'm kind of concerned they might do something stupid with 6, but they do need defense, and I feel like process of elimination, Sasha Bowden is going to be the only defenseman who's like viable in that slot at 31. Yeah. If he falls that far, someone might take him in like the early to mid 20s, and I'll just be like, okay, that's where I figured he should have went.
Yeah, I'm going to go for my steal. I'll go Columbus at 20 if they have the pick, because they have most of their team kind of filled out for the most part in terms of defense, in terms of forwards, where I think that they could just best player available, whoever falls into their lap, just absolutely snag him. In terms of a reach, number 10 for Beak. You never know what this guy's freaking doing on draft night. So I think you got to go with him. We like the Leo Carlson pick back in 2023, friend of the show. But after Seneca, like, especially at 10 to where some of those top guys, top forwards might be gone, like he might galaxy brain this and do something absurd.
My galaxy brain concern is Nashville at 5. Because in my head, the consensus top 4 should be Schaefer, Misa, 1 and 2, and then either order 3, 4, Hagens, Frondell. Some people have Martone up there, so okay, awesome. That's your top 5. Barry Trotz might try to get 2 outside the box for like the best win now type ad, like who's the most pro ready of this group,
pretty Martin,
and lead to taking a bad pick there. I would be concerned because Nashville isn't on like a tanking timeline. They're not on an acquiring young asset timeline right now. So that's my red flag there. We want to talk about trade potential because I got a good one here.
Let's hear it.
All of the hype for Noah Dobson saying, maybe 4 to Utah or maybe Boston wants him. I'm looking at Noah Dobson and I'm looking at Columbus having 2 firsts.
Oh,
And I can see.
We don't want 14th and 20th overall. Get out of here. We're after Hagens, man. I know we can maybe trade up from there, but
no, that's what I'm saying. I can see a sort of 3-team deal where Columbus has 2 first-round picks, but they have a decent team that they like right now. They like their young forward group. And instead of adding guys who won't contribute for 3 years, they'll say, we want Noah Dobson to replace Provorov. We'll be in the playoffs next year. Like that for Columbus. The Islanders would then get 2 first-round picks. They're not late picks. They're number 14 and number 20.
You can move
that should be enough to move into the top 10. I don't know where exactly in the top 10.
It'd be tough to get to like number 7 where you'd want to.
Viable for something there. I think that 14 and 20 probably can hang around the 7-8 range. Will Hagens be there at 7-8? I don't know. We also don't know if the Islanders actually want Hagens, right?
They do. They do. Nah, they do. They do. Nah. They definitely do. For me, I think Pittsburgh at 11 and 12. I think that they shouldn't do something like drastic, like trade both of the picks to move up to 3 or 4 or something like that. But I think with Raquel, with Rust, with Carlson, more so Rust and Raquel because they're making only $5 million. But you look at a Utah, you look at a Nashville, 4th or 5th. Could they package something, one of those guys, or just even more second round picks or something like that? Like Nashville maybe doesn't love a guy at 5, and they have so many needs across the board in terms of like a lot of quantity of prospects, but not really any high quality ones. So I could see something there. I think Pittsburgh's going to want to try to get their guys, and at 11, 12, they might only get one of them, so they might try to trade up.
I would honestly really not like that for Pittsburgh.
I wouldn't either. Because I like the Carter Bears. I like the Eklunds at 11 or 12. But apparently they really like Merca. They really like McQueen. And those guys definitely have a chance to go high. Again, I'm with you. Just sit there. Take Jackson Smith. Take Bear. Take something like that.
Pittsburgh's like a million pieces away. So, yes, we agree here then. It's if I'm running Pittsburgh,
I think that they might
need like 20 young pieces. Just take Jackson Smith at 11 and then either Eklund or Bear at 12, call it a day.
Yeah.
Giving that up to take like Denoye.
I'm not saying trade both those picks. I'm trading one of them in an asset to move up. Not 11 and 12 for 5. I think that's stupid.
Okay, that's a misunderstanding then on where we're going on.
Yeah, I'm saying like Raquel and 11 for 4 and something else. To move up.
Who would want Raquel out of that top group though? Like Nashville.
Well, now that Utah does, now that Utah got Peterka, probably not.
Boston maybe, but
I think Boston could.
The problem with Boston is that's like a massive overpay. If you give like 12 plus Raquel or Rust for 7, that's a massive.
Oh yeah, it would have to be something else, like a second round pick or something. This Boston doesn't even have their own second round pick. Washington has it from the Orlov trade. But it wouldn't just to be move up 5 spots. You'd have to be getting something as well. But yeah, Boston, Philadelphia did just get Trevor Zegras, but they're not going to move back. They're just going to select a center. They're going to try to get their franchise center. But I think Pittsburgh could be dangerous. Montreal also, I'd look to package those 2 picks because at 16, 17, there might not be anything special there that really falls. And they already have a bazillion young guys, a lot of them NHL proven. But yeah, I'm hoping to see fireworks. What are you putting the odds at for Hagens to happen? Schaefer Hagens to the Islanders. Percentage odds.
10%.
10%. I'm at like 22. I think it might happen, man. I'm getting excited. Getting ahead of myself. Anything else you want to talk about? Or shall we end it here?
Higher compete level. Porter Martone or Ace Bailey?
Porter Martone. Yeah, speaking of the NBA draft, Babs is pissed that he got Edgecombe and they didn't trade the pick for
I'm not
God
pissed.
knows who.
I'm just like, it's hard to get excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, after a season from hell like you guys. Yeah, for my Hornets, Con Knipple, I tweeted it out between him and Schaefer. It's officially white boy summer. We're getting after it, getting some shooting with Con Knipple. Can't get too mad. We also took the UConn kid that's a great shooter. But yeah, we're going to probably have a podcast Saturday or Sunday reacting to all this shit. And hopefully we get some big trades to go down and all that good stuff. We'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.